Hi.
Hi.
Okay, hello everyone, and very warm welcome to you, Kathy. Thank you so much for talking with me about subject that I love the most. I think it's creativity and creating in a way that is juicy and magical and inspired, and also leads to like real creations that delight us and delight others. And I came
I
across
love that.
Kathy's work a couple of years ago, I think, in a coaching community. And then I started to follow Kathy's radio and the YouTube channel and her newsletter. And and recently I also attended Kathy's program, Abundance Alchemy. And I think of Kathy as kind of a magical person. And I was so happy when you, Kathy, agreed to talk to me because I want to know all about your creative process. I can't wait to jump into the questions. And this conversation is a part of a series of conversations about creating in a way that is magical and leads to results. So welcome, Kathy, and please tell us a few words about you and about what you do.
Thank you. You know what? Creativity is also one of my favorite topics. I'm a coach, and I coach people to tap into more abundance in every area of their life, because abundance isn't only financial. It's that it's really more of a quality in our lives, that quality of connection and feeling supported and creative flow as well. So you know, that work is done through one-on-ones and workshops and retreats, and you know, just connecting in various ways. And yes, I do have a radio show, love doing the radio show, Sexy Mom Abundant Life, and which is not only for moms. You know, initially I thought, oh, you know, it's for moms, and then I heard all these different people who are not moms listen to it. So it's really about that quality of there is more than enough, and being tapped into the flow of the universe. And yeah, to spread that is my joy.
Wow, wonderful. The quality of abundance. And I can see how much it links with creativity. The knowing that there is abundance of inspiration, abundance of the juice of life that kind of wants to be expressed through us and come to life, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, I was talking with a really gifted musician today, you know, who has won awards for his work, and it's really that impulse that comes through us and wants to be expressed, and when we follow that, it creates something amazing that draws even more people in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, you know, I could really feel it when you said the impulse that wants to be expressed. I love thinking about creativity this way, that it's not only us kind of producing things, creating, but there is something magical that wants to be created. So we are kind of co-creating with something wonderful.
yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, it is a co-creation. And you know, I texted and I said, well, I wonder what would like to be created through you today. You know,
Mm.
I wonder what would like to emerge. And he said, I wonder. And then he goes, oh, I have to go create. Like, sorry, I gotta go because I have to something's bubbling, you know. And I think a lot of times when people think they're creatively stuck, it's just because we're fixated at something coming right now in the way we expect it should come,
Mhm.
instead of, you know, what can I choose right now that's actually going to feed my creative process. And
Mhm.
that might be go take a walk. You know, I do sometimes when I talk with creative projects. So there's not a lot of struggle with them because it's really a conversation between me and it. Like, I created this book, and the book is called Relationships Done Easy. And I knew the title, like, at the very beginning of the book process. But then I started to, because the book kind of told me, but then I started to get in my head, maybe there should be a different title, maybe, but when it comes back to this interaction between the consciousness of whatever project you're working on, and that interplay between you and it, going to listen. Okay, ask questions and listen. I mean, when I would interface with a book like that, like it was a conversation, and I said, just show me who you would like to be involved, then it was really clear to me who I should engage and involve. And then when I went with my own head, like with my mind, my mental sort of, oh, well, this is what makes sense. And, it's got to be logical. It didn't flow in the same way.
Mm. And do you often do it, talking with your creative projects?
Absolutely. Things work better when I do.
Mm.
That's not to say I always do or I always listen, but I definitely have some different kind of meditations that I do. In fact, on my website, meetkathywilliams.com, I have in the shop this 5 different exercises for interfacing or for playing with your projects. And, I got a text from one coach, a Facebook message from a coach, and she said, Kathy, she used some expletives, and she was like, these are amazing. You can't use this as a testimonial because it's got so many bad words, but, they're just like changing my whole life. And it's because we're not taught to look at things in this way, from this perspective. We're taught a lot of times that it's on our shoulders. Well, then it makes it about us, right? Instead of about the creation. So if this is the creation and, I'm over here and I'm just talking with the creation and we're making it into something, just like making a garden, like even if I've planted a garden, I can't make that garden grow.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can feed it fertilizer, I can water it, I can put the seeds where I think they'd be beautiful, but I can't like force it to grow. In the same way, that's true of a book or a song or a business, all of which are creative endeavors. It's like I can plant and I can feed and I can nurture and I can interact, and it will blossom in its own way in its own time. And if I give it freedom to do that, it can turn into something so much greater than I expected. But if I go out to the garden every day and I say, like, why aren't you growing? Right? Like, that seems ridiculous. We know that. But how many times are we like, why are you not the way I want you to be? Right? And then that just creates struggle, and it gets us out of the creative mind and into the analytical judging mind, which is the opposite of where we need to be.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. And using this metaphor of the garden, you mentioned that your role will be creating the environment, watering the plants, I don't know, taking the weeds perhaps. So translating it to the language of creating, let's say, a book or another creative project, what would it be? What do you see as our role?
Well, my role is to interface with the book. So, for example, with Relationships Done Easy, it came to me as an energy. And for those of you who are like, oh, that's really strange, you may like to look up Elizabeth Gilbert's TED Talk on creativity. She's the author of Eat, Pray, Love. That was her biggest success, I believe. So it came to me as an energy, and I knew it wanted to be created. It's on relationships. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And is now the time. And I've got a clear November. So it was probably September at the time. So I put it aside and November 1st, I was like ready to go.
Oh.
And it actually wasn't until the end of November that it was kind of ready to like be fed and nurtured and things like that. But I would just kind of, as though it's a person, as though it's a friend, have conversations about it. Who would you like, or with it, who would you like to be involved? You know, what would you like your name to be? These types of things. And so my job is to receive information, and my job is also to act, right? This is a planet on which, if you have a vision board, staring at the vision board all day will not get what you want.
Mhm.
You have to actually take action.
Yeah.
So my job was to, you know, show up with a pen and write. I know so many people who want to write a book, but they don't actually write, right? or they do, but then they leave it in the computer, and it's been on their computer for 7 years, 10 years. And so then, you know, as it's being created, the question is, you know, one of the questions is, how would you like to change? You know, even when I'm working with someone's body, I do a lot of healing work in person and distance, and it's like asking their body how it would like to change, what it would like to let go of. And so, you know, as you're working with your writing, oh, you know, how would you like to change? Are you done yet? Because sometimes we feel like, oh, well, it's not done, and that's not necessarily the case. That's our judgment,
Mhm.
right? And honestly, the first time I wrote for a book, I wrote just one chapter, but I could have kept editing it for 3 years. Yeah, that doesn't really get it out into the world. So there's a point at which you just have to be like, hey, are you complete? And if not, what do I need to do?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because and then I think also I know I'm talking a lot. It has to do again with a shift of perspective of it's about me,
Mhm.
right? If it's about me, then I'm going to try to make it perfect
Mm.
because I know people are going to judge it. When it's really about the project itself or about what it's going to create in the world, it's a different perspective, because then it's like, oh yeah, this is finished, because
Mhm.
I know much more than is in the chapter.
Mhm.
And as I grow, as time goes on, I'm going to know even more than that. And so the chapter could always be shifting based on my information and stuff like that. But the chapter is for, or the book is for the people out in the world. And they may not know
Mhm.
all that I'm, you know, expanding into. So it's really more about the chapter itself or the book itself and what it's going to create in the world and the people who will receive that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I sense that it's taking a lot of kind of preoccupation with self and wanting to make the project about me, and then being perhaps very hesitant about taking action because what will people say? Is it good enough? Therefore, am I good enough? Yes, and being very kind of maybe paralyzed sometimes. A lot of creators, authors, artists, business people, I believe, are kind of paralyzed wanting the creation to be perfect because they think it's about them. Yes, but I love the way you described it. It's like we can still be kind of honored and delightful and even proud the creation is coming through us, but it's not about us actually. We are not kind of identifying with it so much, kind of giving birth to it, but not it being us. I love it. It's taking a lot of pressure off.
Well, yeah, and you're a mother, so you get it. Like, you can shape a child, but ultimately, they're going to have their own inclinations. So they're going to have, you know, it's not on us,
Yes.
all of it. I mean, our job is to feed and water and breed, and, you know, I mean, make sure they have shelter and clothes that fit. In the end, it's not really about us.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I want to dive a bit deeper into the creative process that you have, and you already shared plenty. You shared that you do a lot of listening, kind of receiving, and you mentioned you do it in meditation, in chatting, kind of receiving energies, talking with your projects, and then taking the action that the project or the creation is asking you to take. Is it accurate?
Yeah, that is really accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, have you noticed that sometimes there are, because it sounds brilliant and quite simple, and have you come across any obstacles on the way ever?
I love this question. You know, I mean, a lot of times the obstacle is my own judgment. For
Mm-hmm.
example, with relationships done easy, you know, initially I kind of knew the title, but then I was like, oh, well, maybe it doesn't want to be that title. And, you know, like that doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's a big one. And also in terms of judgment, you know, I was very aware that the book would be reviewed,
Mm-hmm.
which made me a little bit, you know, I've been a ballerina. I've been reviewed in the newspaper and things like that, which I actually never really struck me as much as like knowing that my book would be reviewed. And so I think a lot of times when I was editing and shaping chapters, because some of them were written by other people, and I was what one of them called the book fairy. She like as I was doing this, I was in the oh no, this is going to be reviewed kind of
Mm-hmm.
mindset. And once we got a bad review, it was just like, oh, okay, no problem, you know, whatever, that's over. And it was clear that the person hadn't even read the book, which was really
Mm-hmm.
funny. But you know, it was sort of like, oh, that was actually no big deal. You
Mm-hmm.
know, people have their own mindset about things. And you know, if you're going to present different ideas, some people are going to be um, hesitant to accept those ideas because they're different, because they're uncomfortable, because they're
Mm-hmm.
new. So I think that's one of the big things, just that idea like, oh, I'm going to be, you know, judged. And there's a vulnerability in that,
Yeah.
which can be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other challenge I think is sometimes just sitting down to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Making it happen. Some of us work better with deadlines. Some people are very disciplined to just no. I sit down for an hour a day and I do my project or whatnot. Um, and so that dance of like getting it done and working on it without making it feel tedious,
Mm-hmm.
and how to do that. You know, some of us work better through dictation if we're writing than actually sitting and writing. So those are some of the challenges, you know, that idea of judgment, the aspect of being judged, right? The self-doubt, and also that the discipline aspect, or just making it happen. You
Yeah.
know what? The other piece I want to bring in, if it's okay,
Mm-hmm.
um, is adaptivity. Is that the word? Adapting. So like, let's say, because I know a lot of us, you know, create workshops, create online programs, things like that. So you get an idea and you really get a sense of like, oh, this would like to happen in April. And so you put it on the calendar for April, and you start to get the word out, and then it starts to feel funny or heavy or clunky or whatever. And then we think, oh, well, it still has to happen in April because that's what my project told me, or that was my intuition, instead of looking and being like, would it still like to happen in April?
Mm-hmm.
Is there something I need to change about this? Maybe you got the ball rolling, so because you thought it was going to happen in April, and it actually needs 2 more months of advertising to get to be what you would like it to be. But if you thought it was going to be in June, you wouldn't have gotten the ball rolling And
Mhm.
so, it wouldn't become what you'd like it to become. So therefore, you take it and you move it to June, and there's already information out in the world, and you add to that, and then it becomes what you would like it to become. So I think
Mhm.
that idea that nothing is stuck, nothing is fixed, and as we get more involved and engaged with our projects, there is adaptability that's required,
Mhm.
right? And that's not only for your happiness, but for the success of the project.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Something came up for me when you were talking about the adaptability, because I can think of some people, and maybe sometimes I'm like this also, that we are inspired by a project, we are working on it, and as the date to kind of reveal it to the world approaches, we kind of can feel less inspired or even doubtful, and we might even think, maybe I don't really want to do it. And sometimes it can be a bit tricky to distinguish, is it really that the project wants us to adapt and change something, or maybe is it fear, is it doubt?
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I really know what you're talking about. And so that's when it's really important to look
Mm-hmm.
at your judgments of your project, of yourself, and your conclusions, because sometimes we actually feel like, oh, I'm done with the project, right? I've put in my creative energy, I've done all these things, and now it's done. Even though the world doesn't know about it because it's been this quiet thing. I think in any business or any even creative venture, it's really useful to see if you're the person to do all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was coaching a woman 2 days ago, and that question came up. It was like, is this just yours, or is that actually a co-creation? And she was like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a co-creation. And we don't know who else is involved yet, but we do know that her project would like an additional energy, an additional person. Even with my business, when I was solo, when I was one, trying to do all the things, I'm not really good at all the things. Hmm? I mean, what might take someone 20 minutes to do, like make a flyer,
Mm-hmm.
or, some kind of, I do not like making emails for my list. I love telling stories, making videos, things like that. But you sit me down with MailChimp or Constant Contact, and I'm just like, ooh, and it'll take me an hour and a half. Not good at that. So it doesn't make sense for me to do that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It makes much more sense to have someone else involved who's like, oh yeah, I love this, and drag the little boxes and do the things. And I don't like that. Yeah, it just so, is it for someone else to do now,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like some people are more logistics people,
Mm-hmm.
where you're like, I am good at teaching the class, but someone else is really good at knowing, oh, Kathy, you're going to need 6 chairs and 6 massage tables, and, make sure you have the manuals and make sure you have all this. That's that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their contribution to my project. So sometimes it's really about engaging other people to be on your quote team, so that one, you don't just drop it, whatever project you're working on. Oh, I'm feeling done. You don't just drop it. But two, you're not always perhaps the person to get it out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really good at that, awesome. If you look at like hairdressers, a lot of them are talkers, and so they're good at like getting things out into the world. Promoters, people like that. But a lot of us creatives aren't actually that person, and when it comes to that piece of it, we're just like, you know
Mm-hmm.
it actually makes our energy go down. Now, if you're not like that, that's awesome. Yet for a lot of us, it is that way. So it's like, okay, maybe I can get someone, let's say it's a class, who will promote it and they get the class for free. Or, they get a certain percentage or whatever it is. I found that, for me, I have a woman on my team who's very much, she keeps me on top of things. She says, "Oh, Kathy, did you edit this thing? Or have you thought about this?" Last night, right before I went to sleep, she sent me an email. "Hey, check this out. What do you think of this?" And she keeps me a little bit on the ball because I am an ideas person and I will just run with the next idea. And then, one sits here 3/4 finished. And Jennifer will be the person who pokes me and she's like, "Hey, look at this. Hey, you know what? You only have 1/4 to go. Let's make it happen."
Yes,
People like
so
that are
important.
valuable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could hear like three so helpful things in what you just said. First would be kind of accepting ourselves and the way we are and our strengths and gifts and talents, and not being so judgmental, because it's so easy to kind of judge ourselves. Oh, I'm procrastinating means I'm lazy, I'm not good enough for it, maybe I should get a normal job, or maybe I'm not that creative after all, and so on. And we can just kind of see what strengths and talents we have, and perhaps engage others, get ourselves support. It's so essential. And the other thing I also heard is, again, coming back to being open, curious, asking questions, the adaptability, and seeing what's really there, what needs to maybe shift in us, or maybe a small change in the project will again get us excited and inspired. So again, listening and being curious.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much there in all of that. And then sometimes it's also about looking like, well, before our thing launches, our project or whatever it is, like looking at what are my fears about this.
Mm-hmm.
When I launched what's called the Radical Abundance Free Challenge, I looked at my fears and I was like, oh, what if 2 people come to this?
Mm-hmm.
That was my, like, what if nobody shows up? Right? I think a lot of us have this, like, what if no one shows up? What if no one buys this? What if nobody? Right? And so I looked at that, and then I had a revelation, and that was, oh, this is for me.
Ah.
Like, if 2 people show up and I do it, I'm getting information, I'm enjoying it, I'm whatever. It doesn't matter if 2 or 200 show up.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is that I'm birthing it into the world. And that created so much freedom around it, because it was like, okay, if people don't show up, that's all right. I'll have information and then I'll be able to run it next time and do it even better. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that the need for it to be perfect the first time around trips up a lot of people too.
Yes. And it's so important that the thing is enjoyable for us also. So even if just 2 people show up, I will still love it and enjoy it, and will inspire me and help me grow, perhaps. Uh, so I. So it's so important to
Okay.
love our creations and do it for ourselves on also, not just for the outcome for others.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the whole idea of the creative process is that at least part of it should be enjoyable. That's not that the whole thing has to be enjoyable, but I like to paint. And the whole for me, painting is very much, I love to do little dots and I love to like, it's not about what will this look like in the end, even though that's nice too, um, it's about the process. I think,
Mm.
and let's just say this, if a musician is playing it's not to get to the end. It's not to finish, right? It's I mean, like in that case, it would be the faster they play, the better it is because it finishes. Right? And part of it is in the act of creating.
Yes. Oh, yes. I can feel it. The the ecstasy almost of creating, of being in the process, the juice of it. It's almost even sad when you are done with it because you had so much fun creating it. Yes, wonderful.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, what else would like to come out of me now?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And questions are so useful for that, because it's like, even me with my friend this morning, oh, I wonder what would like to emerge through you today. He's
Mm-hmm.
creating an album, so a new CD, so I wonder what would like to emerge. And then 3 minutes later he's like, oh, I gotta go create.
Oh,
Um,
yes, it's so fun.
so it's sort of that invitation of, I wonder what would like to be created.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you like me to add? Is it a person? Is it a word? Is it more space?
Mm-hmm.
And is it more discipline for me? What would you like me to add, project? And maybe adding means go for a walk to clear your head.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. And a question comes to mind. For me, this is a lovely idea and something that I do also, like talking with energies, talking with creations. And maybe there are some people who are watching or listening and they haven't done it, They create in
Yeah.
more traditional way. So that might be something new for them, the idea of talking to creations. Do you think that everyone can do it? Even people who are maybe more traditional or a bit skeptical about it.
Yeah, I know that everyone can do it. I think your doubt can get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Just doubt loves to get in the way of things. um but a lot of times I think people hear it and get it, they know. And for each of us, we get our intuitive information in different ways. So
Mm-hmm.
for some people, for a long time I had a friend who would hear the answer, right? Oh yes, she would hear. And whereas I was much more visual, and ultimately I learned to hear as well. But for me it was, oh well, what could I do for this project? And I would see a picture
Mm-hmm.
of what to do, right? Now I also hear. Sometimes it's a feeling like, oh, shall I do this? And then you get a feeling like, okay, that feels off. How about I do this? And then oh, that feels right, type of thing. So, and I think I know all of us have this in some way. It might even be when you're with someone and you get a sense that they're lying. You don't know how you know that, but you just know it on some level. Um, so we all have it, and even the best CEOs. There was a book written about the CEO of Chrysler some years ago, and I read it. I was probably 23 or something, and it was talking about, he said all the best CEOs follow their gut. For
Mm.
him it was the gut, right?
Yeah.
It's the knowing, but not having to know how you know or why you know.
Mm-hmm. And trusting it.
So exactly. Well, and the more we trust it, the more we trust it, the more we tap into that wisdom that we all have access to. The more it grows. And when you acknowledge it, like acknowledging is such a huge key, because acknowledging is, oh, I did know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oh, yeah, it worked out, right? I wasn't sure why to do that, but when I did, it worked out. Or, oh, I didn't trust that guy and now I see why, right? Like acknowledging that, because as you acknowledge it, it's like a muscle, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever you focus on grows. So you're focusing on where you do have that intuitive wisdom, and by focusing on that, you're allowing it to grow. Because a lot of us focus on the doubt. Oh, I'm not sure. I don't know. What shall I do? Let me ask someone else. And society trains us to ask someone else and trust someone else over ourselves.
Yes.
But when we go with what we know, it always creates something greater, even if that thing that it creates is not what we thought it would create. Like the lady who invented chocolate chip cookies, she was just trying to make chocolate cookies.
Really? Okay.
Work out.
Okay.
But it created something amazing.
Yes, something even better, perhaps. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I so much agree with you, Kathy, that we are all intuitive.
So I think one of the biggest...
Sorry, there is delay. Apologies. Please go ahead.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of us have been trained out of it by our parents. Like, I mean, even the idea, okay, I hope no, like, we lie to our kids. We lie about Santa Claus. We lie in other ways, you know, and it's like they have knowing, and then they're like, oh, this isn't true or whatnot. And we say, oh, yes, it is. Right. Instead of saying, oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Right. Tell me more. And in that way, we can learn to help them develop their intuition too.
Oh,
Right? Like I used to ask my kids, well, what's your awareness? Because a lot of us, I mean, all of us have awareness as children, and then it's dumbed down, or we learn just to listen to others because they're the experts and we're not the expert, or they're older, or whatever it is. Instead of, no, each of us has our own wisdom, and when we follow that, it creates amazing things.
That is such a gold. Yes, I love it. And we are such intuitive beings naturally, and we are really conditioned out of it. So you are kind of inviting us and suggesting to train us back to listen to our intuition, to come back to our natural ability. And it is so important to know like our primary language of intuition. Maybe someone will start talking to their creative projects, and maybe they will not see anything, yes, because maybe they can hear or feel, as you mentioned. So it's very important not to be discouraged if it's not coming in a certain way, but be open, kind of quiet, and listen. And I also noticed that for some people, for the answer to come through, it needs to be through kind of like action or expression. So someone can get a answer by writing down, like they might not even hear, but suddenly words will start appearing on the page, or make a movement, like they don't know what is the answer, but their body will move in certain way that will show them, or they might draw or make a sound, and it will kind of come through them also.
Yeah, you know, that's why I did in the class 5 days of energetic exercises for creating. I did, you know, 5 different exercises, because I think we actually did 6, because there are so many ways you can get information. And so if something doesn't work for you, then you can do it a different way, right? There's not one right way to get your information. And you're absolutely right. You know, automatic writing is amazing. Like the artist's way idea of just sitting and writing 3 pages every day. So amazing, because wisdom comes out, wisdom shows up when we allow it to.
Yes. Beautiful. So Kathy, what do you love the most about creating?
What do I love the most about creating? You know, personally for me, I love, oh gosh, there's so much. I love the expansion and the that it's kind of endless, you
Mhm.
know, like there's writing and there's dancing and there's painting and there's it all changes depending on your mood. I love all of that. And then I love birthing it into the world. I love seeing what other people see in it. When the book came out, I loved people saying, "Oh my gosh, I buy that for all my girlfriends," or like I love the process and I love the end result.
Wonderful. Yes.
Yeah.
So would you like to tell us about a couple of your present creations? What are you creating currently?
Um, so I have sort of a little painting studio out here on my
Mm.
porch, and I love to, when it strikes me, which is, a couple times a week, I paint something out here.
Mm.
Um, but what I have in the works right now is, I haven't even told people, but I have this class I'm gonna do called Getting Out of the Drama,
Oh.
because there's so much drama in the world right now about illness and finances and stuff like that, and it's like, yes, all of those scenarios that people are talking about are possible, and when we're not in drama in our heads, we can see beyond that,
Mm.
and we can see creative possibilities and solutions, and we can navigate beyond, like, even if there is something that's kind of an elephant in the room or something, we can navigate it or around it because we're in touch with our own wisdom. So I
Mm-hmm.
love to create just online classes and things like that to help people tap into their own innate knowing. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's coming up. That's in the works.
Beautiful. And how did this idea come to you?
It's interesting to ask how an idea comes. To me, maybe that's the most difficult question, because ideas almost come from nothing, right? They just pop in. Um, or they can come from, all these different elements. Um, that one I think came, hey honey, that one came, nope, because I was just seeing some of the drama that people are creating around, viruses right now and stuff like that. And it's like, yes, one option is to get sucked in to the drama and have that be our main topic of conversation. But another option is to not let the drama impact us, to know it's there, to not push against it, but just to navigate around it and be drama free. Because when we're drama free, even in the midst of an economic recession, we can make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the midst of, stress and agony, we can be blissful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you are observing what is happening.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then just it occurred to you how you can support people to bring the qualities that you know will be beneficial for them.
Yeah, and as I explore your question more, how did the idea come to me? I think a lot of ideas come to me based on either questions I ask or questions other people ask.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes I'll do an online class. I did one on are you a people pleaser? And then some of the questions in that class led to a different class. So a lot of times the ideas are really based on questions, like even, oh, how could I contribute to people? And then see what shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Questions are like a doorway to information and ideas and possibilities opening up.
Yes, when you are talking about it, kind of one question inspires the other and gives a kind of beginning of new creation. I can I can sense that the abundance. I can sense that you're kind of swimming in the abundance of things to create, inspiration. I can sense that you know that you will never run out of ideas and things to create. That it's like almost like this field of abundant creations to be born. That's so wonderful. Mm.
There's never a lack of ideas or creativity.
Yes, wonderful.
I mean, even sometimes we use our creativity against us, you know, like creating fear. That's still, we're being creative in these catastrophic scenarios. We're just using our creativity in a way that hinders us rather than helps us.
Yes, because in order to create drama, you need plenty of your creative juices to go into it. Yes. And,
absolutely.
Yep. And they could go somewhere else to create solution or something positive and wonderful. Yeah. So would you like to, now as we are kind of coming to the close, do you have any suggestions for people who perhaps would like to either create more or have more joy and flow and ease with creations?
You know, my friend said something years ago that I really liked. She's an artist. And she said, when I don't feel inspired, I just go create something crappy. I say, I'm going to go create something crappy for 15 minutes. Right? So it's like, what I like about that is there's nothing on it. She's not like, oh, I have to go create something amazing. It's, I'm just going to go create for the heck of creating. Not because it has to be anything, not because it has to serve anyone. And so I think there's a beautiful freedom in that. I'm just going to go write. I'm just going to go paint. I'm just going to go whatever for 15 minutes. And there's a freedom in that. And she said, usually whatever emerges is pretty good.
Okay.
Not crappy. Right? So I think that is so useful. Yeah. And then also just not making your projects about you. It's so useful.
I love it. Yeah. So it's just removing the kind of the doubtful, the judgmental thinking, because the creativity will flow. I love that I'll create something crappy example, because it gives us permission to create something even crappy. So it's not about us. So all the pressure is off, and then we just are back to the creative flow. I love it. So helpful. Yeah. And another, I think, question. Any ideas for people who are creative, have a lot of ideas, but they have trouble finishing their creations? Actually, you spoke about it at the beginning, but maybe there is anything else to add. I have a lot of people, I know a lot of people like this.
Okay, yeah, finishing your creations. You know, I'm one of those people too. That's where, for me, help comes in. I think also making sure you're not trying to do it someone else's way. Because I was writing a book at one point, and I got this coach, and she said, well, you have to do it this way. So I started to do it her way a little bit, and it totally killed it, right? Because her way was not my way of doing it. It was, you know, you have to do it this way. So then I tried to modify my behavior to do it that way, and it just, the energy, it was like a balloon that had been popped. It just, or let all the air out of it. So looking at your creations and you know, what is stopping me from getting this out in the world, and maybe write a page about that. Oh, I don't want to be judged, or oh, I'm not sure it's very good, or oh, and here's the thing. If you have a book, you don't need to make an A+ grade book. You can make a B book, okay? because it's the editor's job to polish it up and make it better so it shines. Okay, so a lot of times I think people have the sense like, I need to make this perfect and it's not perfect, so therefore I'm not gonna get it out in the world, when it's really not actually their job to make it perfect. You know, and perfect is judgment, like what is perfect. But like, if you're a writer, your job is not to make the best book in the world. It's the editor's job to help that happen.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for this reminder. And also, so important to know that someone else's way might not be our way. So kind of accepting our own process. Yes, and trusting it. Wonderful.
Yeah, and the last thing that I really want to emphasize again with that is, you know more about your topic likely than when you started, right? Whether it's a class you're going to teach or a book you're writing, whatever it is, like, you already know more than when you began it, but that doesn't mean you need to include everything in your project. The people who, it's like, if you're a kindergarten teacher, you don't need to give your class everything. You just need to teach them, you know, the ABCs and how to use those and how to pronounce things and, you know, basic math and numbers. You don't need to give them all that you know. And it's so true when you're teaching a class or when you're writing a book. Like, you don't need to include everything.
Oh, this is super helpful too. I can struggle with it sometimes because there's so much else that I would like to include, but it can actually motivate us to do another project afterwards or have another creation. Not everything needs to be included in one single thing. Beautiful. Okay, Kathy. It's such a pleasure to chat with you about this. And if people would like to learn more about you and about your creations and offerings, where can they find you and get in touch?
My website is the best place, as well as YouTube. I really love YouTube. MeetKathyWilliams.com, Kathy with a K, Williams with an S.com. And that has everything, including the radio show. There's a radio tab there. Sexy Mom Abundant Life is on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, all the different places. And that, you know, I just love to make videos and be available with different tips for more ease with abundance and creativity. And this conversation was right on target. So check out the shop there too. You can find that 5 days of energetic exercises for creations if you want to get more in touch with, and in different ways, with your creativity and with your creations. Super fun.
Wonderful. And I will also include the link in the comments and in the description. And I just want to add to the people who will go to your YouTube channel that the extra bonus for me is the beautiful landscape and the sounds of Maui where you are. Your videos are filled with kind of sounds of nature at the background, and there is sometimes ocean or trees like now behind you. It is so uplifting to see it and also listen to you. It's gorgeous. So thank you so much, Kathy.
That's one thing I love about. Thank you. Aloha, Karolina, and aloha, everybody.
Aloha. Bye.